Welcome back to the channel, everybody. If you're a fan of the Toyota Tacoma, you're probably already aware that the Toyota configuration website now features that 4th generation 2024 Tacoma. But this is not just another video talking about the configuration tool. Instead, I already gathered some of the most important features, and I found out which trims have those features as options. Why am I doing this? Well, when people hear there's upgraded options like a manual transmission, a 6-foot bed, a hybrid engine, they get excited thinking all those features are customizable across every trim type, but it's not. So instead, I compiled all that data into one easy slide, so let me show that to you. First thing we need to do is make sure we know all the trim types. Toyota now has 8 of them: the SR, the SR5, the Pre-Runner, the Sport, the Off-Road, the Limited, the Trail Hunter, and the TRD Pro. One thing to know though, it's obvious if you look down near the bottom, the Trail Hunter and the TRD Pro, they have not announced the prices for those trim types just yet. But the other 6, they do have the prices for they have the prices for all of the configurations, but the price you see there is for the baseline, most bare bones version of that trim type. So let's go ahead and get straight to the conclusion. Here are a table here. If you want to read this, you can. I use this data. I also use this data, and then finally the conclusion is right here. And this is what you need to know. The SR, which is that first model, that has a 228 horsepower and 243 pound-feet of torque engine option. So basically it's a fleet truck. In other words, if you thought you can get an SR with a hybrid engine, you can't do it. You're really restricted to that model unless you get the manual transmission. If you get the manual transmission, it gives you 270 horsepower, but an automatic transmission SR and thinking you can buy that and then, get a hybrid option or whatever, you can't do it. Next, the SR, the SR5, and the Pre-Runner are the only trims that have that extra cab option. Now, if you don't know what I mean by the extra cab, it's basically the extended cab. So let's go ahead and take a look at a trim that has it. So down here is the Pre-Runner. The Pre-Runner has that extended cab. You've heard people call it a half cab, but Toyota calls it the extra cab. Now, if you have 4 full doors, like here in the SR5, Toyota calls that the double cab. Most people call it a crew cab. So now that you know that, the SR, SR5, and Pre-Runner are the only trims with that extra cab option. In other words, if you thought you could get a TRD Pro and get an extra cab, can't happen. Next, manual transmission. A lot of people liked hearing about the manual transmission is staying when Toyota announced it. But here's the thing, it's only with the SR, the Sport, and the Off-Road. I think a lot of off-roading enthusiasts are at least happy that it comes with the off-road. But here's some of the things with that manual transmission. You can't get a 6-foot bed. You cannot get an extra cab with the manual transmission. You can't get a hybrid, which makes sense. I don't think there's any hybrid manual transmission vehicles in the US. And then finally, if you do get a manual transmission Tacoma, they have to be 4-wheel drive. You can't have a rear-wheel drive manual transmission. So in other words, here in the conclusion, all manual transmissions are 5-foot beds, double cabs, 4-wheel drive with a 2.4 liter engine. Next, let's talk about that hybrid engine. So the hybrid engine, that one is only on the Sport, the Off-Road, the Limited, the Trail Hunter, and the TRD Pro. You cannot get an extra cab hybrid engine. You cannot get a rear-wheel drive hybrid engine. And also you cannot get a 6-foot bed on the hybrid engine, except for one. There is one exception for that, and that is the Trail Hunter. And that's why I put the picture up there in the top right. The Trail Hunter, with that photo, is the 6-foot bed. So the Trail Hunter is the only hybrid engine Tacoma with a 6-footer. Next, the TRD Pro and Limited cannot have a 6-foot bed, period. Even if you want to get a gas engine in the Limited, you still have to get a 5-foot bed. And then finally, the Limited is the only trim with the all-wheel drive. Let's go back and review the data. Those are the conclusions. Those are the most important things about that video. And now I'll show you how I got there. So you have your engine types for the SR, SR5, and Pre-Runner. All of these use the 2.4 liter engine. Now, if you look at transmissions, you look at the bed types, the cabins, and then the prices for the rear-wheel drive and the prices for the 4-wheel drive. If you see something in blue that's standing out because it's either a manual transmission, the 6-foot bed, or the double cabin, that's why they're in blue. So there's your options for the SR and the price points for the SR. Same thing for the SR5. Notice, no hybrid engine. All the transmissions are manual transmission. So if you want the 6-foot bed double cab and four-wheel drive, you're looking at around $41,000 for that truck. And then next is the pre-runner. The pre-runner only comes in one configuration. You're looking at an automatic transmission with the 4-cylinder engine. You're getting a 6-foot bed. You can't get a 5-foot on your pre-runner. And then finally, no four-wheel drive. I think this has roots in Baja racing, where if you're going over 60 miles per hour in the desert, you don't want to be in four-wheel drive because back then you couldn't. It wasn't an option at the time. Now let's look at the sport and the off-road. So the sport, this is probably the most configurable option that Tacoma has. And I wouldn't be surprised if the sport ends up selling a lot of trim types. So this is the first trim type that has the hybrid engine. It also has a manual transmission. It also has a 6-foot bed, but you can't play around with these. You can't put the 6-foot down here with the hybrid engine. You can't put a manual transmission with a 6-foot bed. So you're kind of stuck with what they're offering you. And the price points are also there. Note again, the hybrid engine does not have a price point just yet. Now next is the off-road. If you're thinking, hey, sweet, I can finally get that manual transmission off-road with a 6-foot bed, can't happen, unfortunately. But here are your choices for the TRD off-road: transmission types, your bed length, your cabin, and whether or not it has a rear-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive option. All right, let's go to the last one. Here's the Limited, the Trail Hunter, and the TRD Pro. Limited, you can get both engine choices on the Limited. The one with the hybrid does not have a price yet. However, the gas engine does have the price. You're like, this is the most expensive gas engine option, but that's $52,000 for the gas Limited. Also, this is the only one that's all-wheel drive, which we pointed out earlier. Next, Trail Hunter, 2 types, 1 engine, but 2 configurations. You can either have a 5-foot or 6-foot bed, which I think is pretty interesting, because why doesn't the TRD Pro do it? That feature makes me wonder, right? Exactly which truck here, the Trail Hunter or the TRD Pro, is really going to be the exclusive one, the top of the line, if you will. It might be the Trail Hunter. It might be the TRD Pro. I don't know. Maybe comment below if you've already seen the specs for both of these and compare them. But both of them look pretty cool. But I think it's important to know that if you do want a Trail Hunter or if you do want a TRD Pro, you're restricted to the hybrid engine, and you can't get a manual transmission of that version, and the price has not been announced yet. Well, anyways, that's the video. I put this together pretty quickly. I just wanted to get this information out there because, again, these features, these key features here, and the restrictions of the configurations, I think is pretty important. And if you're shopping around for a Tacoma, these are things I do think you need to know. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.